was giving us all those stories, all those stories, in order to tell us that victory is not necessarily in getting to that space where you're in power and somehow you're uh, basically victorious on all ends. Victory is really to be victorious to get to Jannah. That's the most important thing. Even when the situation is not working in your favor, your duty is to invest. Your duty is to try. Your duty is to do the best. And remember, the most important definition of victory is the victory to get to Jannah and not necessarily the victory to make a country. That's one side, definitely. You're asked to also work towards that, but it's not necessarily the only area of victory. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned Ashab al-Ukhdud, even though technically they actually were killed one by one. No one stayed alive. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was mentioning them as the people that were, I guess, carrying and resembling a legacy of victory. But what type of victory? It was a victory to get to Jannah. But politically and in the definition of dunya, they were defeated. They were gone. You see it? They were gone. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a different definition of what makes victory. Okay, we are going to be doing, inshallah, of course, reorienting our vision. We're still at that with the pearls of the Prophet ﷺ. And of course, with the pearls of the Prophet ﷺ, there's so much, and so many details. We talked about that different ahadith. من كانت الآخرة همه جعل الله غناه في قلبه وجمع له شمله وأتته الدنيا وهي راغمة. We did talk about a number of different ahadith, and we talked about the Prophet ﷺ and how he was reorienting, redirecting our focus from looking at dunya to being our place of success, to letting al-akhirah be our place of success, from letting dunya be our place of focused energy to letting our energy be focused on akhirah, from letting our dunya be our place of course, when our place of fear. If our dunya is your place of fear, then you're going to basically get yourself into being a coward. You're basically then going to lose a lot of your principles because you're afraid if your focus is on this dunya, then you will easily give up on your principles, because to you, if the principle and interest are right there, principle interest right now probably head to head with each other, then of course the most important interest to of course ourselves, our nature at least, is survival. So once our survival becomes at risk, then we would be willing to give up our principle. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is letting us know that your first and most important goal is Jannah. It's reorienting your vision from seeing that your focus is dunya to your focus is akhirah. From seeing your place of fear is dunya to letting your place of fear is akhirah. From seeing dunya as the place of victory to seeing that akhirah is my place of victory. From seeing dunya as my place, if I don't get enough of, that it's going to be my place of sorrow, to seeing that no, it's the akhirah that you want to get the most of. And this is extremely important. It's redirecting that. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ was letting us learn how we would redirect our vision. So he was saying, well, if your heart is going to be just focused and so fixated on dunya, then what you're not going to realize is that you're going to be losing of dunya. Why? because there's not going to be a certain amount where it's going to be enough. If you're making 300,000 K, then you're going to want 500, then 600, then 700, and etc. Then you're going to start multiplying of that, and there's never going to be enough. You know, it's really weird. I mean, you look at Elon Musk, he's got all these billions and billions, but he would still, hey, he's working so hard, sleeping on a couch still, you know, wanting to even sleep at work, etc. Because is it multiplying the money? How much money would you really want? How much of that a number in the account is enough? Okay, maybe, you know, according to the interviews and what he's saying, that it's not necessarily just the number, but he says he's working towards a different goal. But in the end, of course, we see that other millionaires and other people that, hey, it's basically resemble human beings, that there are certain times we just, of course, we could just never get enough of dunya if our focus is on dunya. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is letting us know in the Prophet ﷺ, let your focus be on akhirah, and you will see dunya coming at you, coming for you, coming towards giving you the provisions that are needed for you. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ continues, وَمَنْ كَانَتِ الدُّنْيَا هَمَّهُ, and if dunya was their place of focus, their place of what is, of course, the most important thing for them, فَرَّقَ فَجَعَلَ فَقْرَهُ بَيْنَ عَيْنَيْهِ, he'll make his own poverty right there, just always. Of course, when you say بَيْنَ عَيْنَيْهِ, this isn't talking about between his eyes, but it would be a metaphor to mean that it would be his main fear. What if I lose money? What if I can't pay my child's college tuitions? What if I can't pay my rent? What if I can't pay this? What if, and of course, فَرَّقَ عَلَيْهِ شَمْلَهُ. And of course, certainly, what is a shaml? A shaml is basically all the necessary tools that you need in order to help you figure your matters out. But in a situation where dunya is the most important thing that you're focused on, you're just going to feel that all the different necessary tools that are needed for your success and to feel a certain level of stability, you're going to see that it's continuously breaking apart. And of course, if it's breaking apart, then you're also panicking and you're also falling apart because you're feeling that, oh, nothing is working in this dunya. Then you're going to go into a different mental state. And we did talk about وَلَمْ يَأْتِهِ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا إِلَّا مَا قُدِّرَ لَهُ. The only thing that they would get out of dunya is really what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had be decreed beforehand of what they will get in dunya. And certainly we did talk about the other hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, speaking to us, well, what actually comes at, let's say, the price of focusing on dunya. We talked about it comes at the price of our mental health. It comes at the price of our akhirah. It comes at a price of our dignity as well. And we took this hadith and we said, Jibreel comes to the Prophet ﷺ and he says, "O Muhammad, live for as long as you may. Eventually, you'll face death. And love whomever you will, or eventually you will depart and you will leave them, or they will die, or you will eventually have to let go. And do whatever you may do, and eventually you'll be held accountable for it. And know that what gives a believer the honor, their high rank, is basically the amount of investment that they would do in investing in Qiyam al-Layl. And in order to give that believer, and what brings a believer this type of independence, this type of dignity, this type of feeling that they are doing their matters on their own without needing the help of others, well, the most important thing is learning how to be independent and not necessarily need other people to be there for you. So we talked about that. We also talked about the hadith that the Prophet ﷺ had basically let us, I guess, get this awareness when we're looking at dunya, that it's very temporary. So we would talk about, well, the things in dunya, very temporary, and of course, very small. And he gave the example that dunya is like dipping your finger inside the sea and taking your finger, your index finger out. How much water did it really contain? Not much. How much water is left? Well, there's plenty of it, but certainly when you dipped your finger inside that water, you didn't get much of it. Same thing. We're not just talking about the provisions, but we're also talking about time, because it's part of our nature that we want to prolong our stay as much as we can. That's most of the studies and what they're trying to do. They're trying to, of course, increase longevity, increase our time, and give us better health, etc., in order to live longer, because we're just really focused on dunya. We're not saying don't work towards, I guess, doing those studies, not at all. But the Prophet ﷺ is telling us, well, that's a different type of homework where they want to make sure that people are getting healthier, etc. That's definitely invest in that. But the Prophet ﷺ is telling us at the same time, he said, مالي وللدنيا إنما مثلي ومثل الدنيا كمثل راكب استظل تحت شجرة. No matter how old you may go. And the Prophet ﷺ was saying that this dunya, this life, is exactly like a person sitting under a tree just to basically rest under its shade. Then they would get up. And as if, in fact, even if they don't get up, the shade, just a matter of time. The shade goes away, and you're going to find yourself that what you were resting under is no longer there. And that's the same thing. That whether it's your children, whether it's your home, whether it's your age, your beauty, whatever it is, it basically just with a simple law in physics, thermodynamics, and all those different things, they would basically just wear in just a matter of time. Your age, it just takes away all the vibration, all the health. You could do all those Botox and all those fillers and all those facelifts and all of those, not saying from the Islamic perspective here, but at the end, you know that the core, the infrastructure of your body, that is aging, and there's no change to it. Your bones, your heart, your liver, your kidney, that's the infrastructure. You can change the appearance and perhaps make your appearance look young, but the truth of the matter is that your organs are basically regressing as time passes by. There's no way that you can somehow continue bringing in new spare parts to make yourself that, okay, I'm young again. Eventually, عِشْ مَا شِئْتَ فَإِنَّكَ مَيِّتٌ. Live as long as you may. Eventually, you'll face death. So how do we deal with all of this? The Prophet ﷺ said, كُن فِي الدُّنْيَا كَأَنَّكَ غَرِيب. Be in this life like you're a stranger. Why like a stranger? Because a stranger, they don't carry too many goods. Why? Because they recognize that there isn't going to be a place for them to keep it and preserve it in. So they stay, let's say, low-key in what items they would have. Whether it's the clothes, whether it's the food, whether it's the items, the list goes on and on. And certainly we mentioned that even from the first second that you go on flight, you're going to start weighing your luggages, weighing your bags, making sure they're not exceeding 50 pounds or 23 kilos or whatever it is, and making sure that you're really low key, or else you'll eventually pay the price for every additional pound. And that's the same thing in dunya. You want to stay as much as you can focused on getting to that akhirah, getting to your flight, and not necessarily just the items that are with you. Because to you, what you care about is you getting to the destination and not necessarily the items And even if, let's say, you go into some air turbulences, etc., and they said, we need to take down some of that weight, what are you going to do? You're going to basically, yes, you would definitely want to hold on to your items, but you're not going to throw yourself in order to lose the weight that's probably being carried on the flight. You're going to say, you know what, if it means my belongings, if it means me getting, of course, safe, and me getting at least in a place where I'm and sparing my life, take all my belongings, take everyone else's too, because you recognize that what really matters is your life and getting to the destination. And we also talked about, well, how did the Prophet ﷺ tell us what we're supposed to be doing and how we can spare our life? So we went into this hadith, اغتنم خمسا قبل خمس, and take advantage of 5 before 5. شبابك قبل هرمك, وصحتك قبل سقمك, وغناءك قبل فقرك, وفراغك قبل شغلك, وحياتك قبل موتك. Take advantage of 5 different things: your youth before your old age, your health before your illness, your wealth before your poverty, your free time before your busy time, and your life before your death. So the Prophet ﷺ was telling us to make use of those times because they're not going to be forever. Whether it's your health, whether it's your mental health, or whether it's the privileges that you probably might have in wealth, or perhaps, of course, the different times that you'll be capable of doing things. Our kids would see us that, oh, you're not busy, you're just at home. It's like, not busy and at home. What do you think I'm doing to make it your life easy? They won't necessarily feel it until they get into that position of being parents and seeing how much time it takes to clean, work, do the laundry, do all the different things, maintaining our homes. And the Prophet ﷺ was teaching us there are two very important blessings that people may not recognize. Number 1, as-sihha. Number 2, al-faragh. It's basically health and your free time. We also talked about this other potential that the Prophet ﷺ was telling us to focus on in order to redirect our vision. لا تزول قدم عبد يوم القيامة حتى يسأل عن عمره فيما أفنى وعن علمه فيما فعل وعن ماله من أين اكتسبه وفيما أنفقه وعن جسمه فيما أبلاه. That the Prophet ﷺ said that the feet of the servant will not move on the day of resurrection until they are asked about, 1, their life and how they spent it, and about their knowledge and what they did with it, and about their wealth and where they earned it from and how they spent it, and about their body and how they used their body, that is their health. Just looking at that hadith, it basically tells us these key potentials that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to give each and every single one, which basically is key to helping us get to Jannah. Whether we're speaking about your own life, what did you do with it? Knowledge, and what did you do with your knowledge? How did you work towards getting your knowledge and letting others learn from that knowledge, or at least you letting that knowledge direct you to getting to Jannah, at least yourself, and the money. So those are the most important potentials: your life, your knowledge, degree, and your wealth. Where did you get it from? Where was that income coming from? How did you spend it? Here it is. Guess it's not just in taxes, but it's also right there, even in the grave, before you even get to the hereafter. These questions you're asked about in the grave. What did you do with the money? How much did you spend? Where was that money coming from? Where was that income coming from? How did you distribute your income? How much money was used for food? How much money was used for clothes? How much money was used for, I guess, communication, transportation? How much money was used for entertainment? How much money was used for donations? Then, how much money is also used to maintain your children, their Islamic studies, their health, their necessary items, and the list goes on and on. How much of that were you investing in? وعن جسمه فيما أبلى. And in regard to the body, what did you do with your body? Your health. How much of that health did you work towards on strengthening? Were you struggling with your obesity as a result of overeating? Or were you really not working out? Or were you necessarily just making your health just be, I guess, a place to boast and not necessarily use for investing for al-akhirah? What did you do with your good health? How did you maintain it? And this is important. How did you maintain your health? And what did you do in order to let that health work towards bringing you to akhirah? What did you do with it? You were given that. How did you work towards maintaining it? And how did you work towards, of course, investing with this potential? Let's see. And we also talked about this hadith when the Prophet ﷺ said, I was standing at the door of Jannah, and most of those that entered it were masakin. And those that had the wealth were basically kept. They were standing longer. And those that were ordered to be in hellfire, they were pushed or at least delivered to enter hellfire. And he said, I stood at the door and entrance of hellfire and found that majority were actually women. And we talked about that piece of it. Why were the majority women? Why are we more susceptible? Is this misogyny? We did talk about it. We're not going to open this subject. And the Prophet ﷺ was basically taking us into recognizing a number of different areas in terms of dunya. Let's see, what do we see? That Abu Huraira said, I heard the Prophet ﷺ, ألا إن الدنيا ملعونة ملعون ما فيها إلا ذكر الله وما وله عالم أو متعلم. Let's see. He said, indeed, the world is cursed, and everything in it is cursed, except the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and what is related to it, and a scholar or a learner. So what does that even mean? How do we understand this? What does it mean that the dunya is cursed? When you say something is cursed, that means it's empty of mercy. When you say something is cursed, it means it is the path to more distress. Well, this is also mentioned in the ayah when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that the human being was created, and the word that is used is kabad, hardship. Now, it's part of our nature that we would work towards a level of stability, and we would think that if I work hard and I would, I guess, get a higher income and let's say allocate part of this for Social Security, I would ensure at least having a good time, or at least ensure that I have enough money for my at least retirement, etc. And here's the 401k, and we're going to look into all these different areas and think that I'm securing my future. It's part of our nature. Even though we don't know we're going to live that long to get, and I guess, get some of what we're doing. But when we're looking at what we're trying to invest in, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, well, the Prophet ﷺ is telling you, listen, there's no mercy in this dunya. There's going to be struggle. And yes, whether you work towards an income, or whether you work towards getting married, or whether you work towards raising your children, or whether you work towards who knows what it is, there's no mercy. there's gonna come a challenge where you would least expect it. There's no mercy. You would work towards perhaps securing a retirement to probably discover that, oops, just when I thought I secured myself, here it is. It's basically going for my health care. Now, where's the mercy in it? I work towards that, and now it's going for a treatment. And then, same thing. You work towards getting married. Now the children are basically coming in as a challenge. What? I was so happy. I thought it was just an issue of getting children. And many will invest, hey, IVF and whatever it takes. I want to get children. And what do we get? The children then becoming probably the challenge when you would least expect it. You would work towards your physical health, but then because you're working so much and putting in all these hours, then it's going to be at the expense of your mental health. You could see there's not a single area that you can necessarily guarantee that for sure it's going to bring you the complete stability or complete happiness, because dunya is mal'una. الشجرة الملعونة ده في القرآن, the dunya. That tree that was mentioned, it was, according to most mufassirin, it really refers to dunya. That there's no mercy. There's no mercy. You're just going to get yourself tired, and it is part of your nature. It's part of your nature that you work towards feeling that there is a place of stability. But that place of stability is not dunya. Your nature was definitely designed to recognize there's a place of stability, there's a place of happiness, but you're confusing it in this dunya. It's actually Jannah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala built within you the recognition that there is a place of stability, but then your mental, let's call it your mental situation, basically confused you into thinking that it's this dunya. It's a self-manipulation. Oh, that's what Iblis even did. Remember when we talked about إني جاعل في الأرض خليفة قالوا أتجعل فيها من يفسد فيها ويسفك الدماء ونحن نسبح بحمدك ونقدس لك. That's the same thing. Where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was telling us the story of Adam, and then he tells us, Iblis comes in and he says, أولا أدلك على شجرة الخلد وملك لا يبنى. I will show you off to a tree where it will give you eternity. Mulkin la yabla, property that will be forever lasting. It would never wear off. What happens? Well, it's part of our nature that we're in search of that. We're in search of eternity. We're in search of different means that would basically enable us to getting the wealth to help us somehow secure a certain mean to help us at least get to stability. That's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was telling us. That's part of our nature. That's part of our instinct. That's part of what Iblis recognized, we're in search of. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, well, what you are searching for in this dunya is actually a self-manipulation. In dunya, it's mal'una. There's no mercy. So what you have to recognize that the true mercy is in Jannah. So what would help me in all of this mal'un, no mercy life that I'm living in? The Prophet ﷺ says, dhikrullah. Number one, what would actually help you is the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Number two, wama walah, and all the things that basically relate to dhikrillah. And alim, knowledge, basically the ilm that relates to recognizing dhikrillah. And muta'allim, or a person that's investing in seeking the knowledge. How did we get there, and why these elements? When you look at dhikrillah, how is that supposed to help me at all? How is that related to living my dunya that is mal'una? When you're talking about dhikrillah, there's the oral dhikr. 2, there's the visual dhikr. 3, there's the audio dhikr. 4, there's the behavioral dhikr. 5, there's the monetary dhikr. 6, and you can go on and on with the different types of dhikr. But the dhikr, and the most important dhikr that we would do, is oral dhikr. What is oral dhikr? La ilaha illallah, subhanallah, alhamdulillah. What does that have to do with recognizing that everything in this dunya is mal'oon? When you say something is mal'oon, certainly there actually is an implication to it. If you're saying that this dunya, there's no mercy in it, the implication is really affecting our mental health, depression, because I'm going to run after something, not knowing if I don't know that it's mal'oon, then I'm just going to run and continue running after it, thinking that there is somehow a glimpse of light at the end of the tunnel. But then if you keep running into the tunnel, and then all of a sudden, you just stand and just take a moment and you're like, looks like I'm running and running, but there's no light at the end of the tunnel. Where is the light? I'm running. I've been running for years and years and years, and I cannot find a tunnel. I cannot find the end of the tunnel. Where is this leading me to? So the Prophet ﷺ tells you, listen, this dunya is nothing but a place of la'na. This dunya, it's a tunnel of darkness. It's a tunnel of no mercy. It's a tunnel of distress. It's a tunnel of distress, keeping in mind what you really can only find in this dark tunnel is a light of dhikr. Dhikr is the only light that is going to help you in recognizing at least your path. That yes, this tunnel is dark and long, but there's a light that will help you find your way to alim, knowledge. Ilm is knowledge. Alim is a scholar. Muta'allim, a person that's seeking ilm. Why seeking ilm? Because in order to be able to figure out the map and the route of this dark tunnel, you need at least a torch of light, and you also need at least a map, and that map is knowledge. Knowledge is basically the map to help you redirect your focus on what really matters, the purpose, and know what choices to make, when to turn right, when to go left, when to stay idle, when to continue, when to run, when to jog, when to scurry, when to stop, when to take a deep breath, when to sleep and take a rest. That's what ilm basically helps you get that light in place until you would get to the end of the tunnel. What's at the end of the tunnel? It's either Jannah or Nar. It's either hellfire or Jannah. You have to work towards making sure in order to get to Jannah, you want that torch of dhikr. What is behavioral dhikr? What is oral dhikr? What is the dhikr that you were mentioning? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was mentioning in a number of different ayat, different types of dhikr. Oral dhikr, taking the time to repeat certain words, but this repetition is glorifying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but it's not a repetition to just get your tongue tired. No, it's letting the words vibrate from a word of mouth, vibrating into your heart and making it the light that radiates into your mind, into your spirit. And then that light is going to be the light that will help you, let me say, survive this dunya that is mal'una. How? Think of Prophet Ayub or Yaqub alayhi salam. And when he had lost his son, lost his sight as a result of the deep sorrow that he was living for the son that he had lost. And then they would ask him, well, why are you constantly living this? And he said, فَصَبْرٌ جَمِيلٌ. I'm just going to live the sabr. I'm just going to live the patience. But then he made the dhikr in order to help him through this distress. Wallahu al-musta'an. Here's that dhikr. Allahu al-musta'an. What did he want to do? He is recognizing that this dunya is no mercy. What can I do in order to help me survive this distress that this dunya has? I need to connect myself and redirect my focus to seeing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the power that controls the world. Whether it's a trauma, I know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the power of justice. Whether it's illness, I know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the power of healing. Whether it's poverty, I know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the power of rizq and provision. Whether it's failure, I know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the power of success. And the list goes on and on. And now we're directing our focus from seeing and letting the distress take us and deplete our energy. There we would recognize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that controls all the different forces in the world. And therefore, I would redirect my focus from looking at this dunya and letting it deplete my energy to letting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give me the power to survive, give me the power to stay focused on the purpose that preceded my existence. And therefore, I would not only connect to the oral dhikr, but I would also engage in the audio dhikr, making sure that I'm surrounding myself by those and with those that are constantly remembering and making the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be their place of focus. So what am I doing? That audio dhikr. Take the time to seek knowledge. Take the time to surround yourself with people that are full of light, that speak of light. That way, your ear would be a place that would bring about that injection, that radiance of light that will light your mind. Because we know that the five senses, the most important thing about our five senses is that it's the tool that basically helps us relate with the world and the matter that's around us. The five senses is the first thing that we learn in science. Why? Because that's your tool to learning about the world around you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is letting you know that those five senses are also the tools to help your heart and your soul recognize what it was created for, the purpose that preceded its existence. So that's why you would see the ayat which tells, أَفَلَا تُبْصِرُونَ? Do they not see? أَفَلَا يَسْمَعُونَ? Do they not hear? أَفَلَا يَتَذَكَّرُونَ? Do they not remember? And the list goes on, where the ayat are basically letting us know that you've got these potentials. Make sure that you use these potentials in order to keep you steadfast, to get to you to the purpose that preceded your existence. What about the behavioral dhikr? Behavioral dhikr is how you would put your deen into action. Remember, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always telling us that آمنوا بالله اليوم الآخر and عملوا الصالحات. That's عملوا الصالحات right there. To believe in Allah is one side. اليوم الآخر is to keep you connected that, hey, there's an end, there's a purpose that you were created for that preceded your existence. That's what you want to focus on. But how do I actually get to that purpose? العمل الصالح. العمل الصالح, that pious action is basically the key. It's basically the energy that you would invest in order to walk towards the purpose that preceded your existence. But what if I can't be a scholar? At least invest in being a student of ilm. That's why this hadith said, أو متعلم. Even if you can't be a scholar, maybe it's too hard for you, but at least put in the effort to bring and take what? Well, at least take in the effort to learn and be a student of knowledge. Let's see Al-Hafiz Ibn Rajab. Let me see Al-Hafiz Ibn Rajab died at age 45. He was from the Hanbali madhab. He was one of the students of Ibn Taymiyyah. Didn't live long, you could say 45, that's my age. Let's see what he said. He said, فَالدُّنْيَا وَكُلُّ مَا فِيهَا مَلْعُونَ. And he said, أي مبعدة عن الله لأنها تشغل عن إلا العلم النافع الدال على الله وعلى معرفته وطلب قربه ورضاه وذكر الله وما والاه مما يقرب من الله، فهذا هو المقصود من الدنيا. فإن الله إنما أمر عباده بأن يتقوه ويطيعوه، ولازم ذلك دوام ذكره، كما قال ابن مسعود: تقوى الله حق تقواه، أن يذكر فلا ينسى، وإنما شرع الله إقام الصلاة لذكره، وكذلك الحج والطواف، وأفضل أهل العبادات أكثرهم ذكرا لله فيها. فهذا كله ليس من الدنيا المذمومة، وهو المقصود من إيجاد الدنيا وأهلها، كما قال تعالى: وما خلقت الجن والإنس إلا ليعبدون. Didn't translate that one. I'll translate it really quick right now. So what is the lesson that Ibn Hajar, sorry, what is the lesson that right there he wanted us to get to? And of course, when we're speaking about Al-Hafiz Ibn Rajab, we're speaking about a scholar that didn't live long, but managed to actually bring about great ilm. And this great ilm, usually it needs a lot of experience, but there's another type of ilm. This ilm that basically would help us get to that knowledge is basically that dhikr, that light. Let's see what he said. He said, in this world and everything in it, it is cursed. What did you want to say? How did you want to understand this? And he said, it is cursed, meaning distance from Allah, because it distracts from Him, except for beneficial knowledge that guides to Allah, understanding Him, seeking His closeness and His pleasure, and remembering Allah and what brings one closer to Him. This is the purpose of this world. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded His servants to be mindful of Him and obey Him, which necessitates the constant remembrance of Him. As Ibn Mas'ud had said, true piety is to remember Him and not to forget. Allah legislated that establishment of prayer for his remembrance, as well as his pilgrimage of worship. And of this is not from the condemned aspects of this world. It is the purpose of creating this world and its inhabitants. As he said, and I did not create the jinn and make mankind except to worship me. Looking at that, you could see that what he was basically teaching us, that he's learning from this hadith that what we're supposed to be doing in order to maintain that relationship in this dunya with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the purpose that preceded our existence is basically giving us right there to help us focus on this dunya by getting, one, the knowledge, and certainly getting that remembrance to keep us, of course, aware and awake and not get distracted from considering our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let's see the other scholar. He said, and his name is Imam al-Maqdisi. Imam al-Maqdisi, although he's originally from Nablus, but he lived in Syria, but I guess wanted to maintain that, hey, he's from Al-Quds. Fair enough. Okay, so he said, and let's look at the English part because of time. He said, take advantage of your precious life. May Allah have mercy on you and cherish your precious moments. Know that the duration of your life is limited and your breaths are numbered. Every breath diminishes a part of you. The entire lifespan is short, and what remains of it is little. Every moment of it is a precious jewel with no equal, no substitute for it. With this brief life comes the eternity of bliss or torment of hellfire. If you weigh this life against eternal life, you will realize that every breath is worth more than 1,000 million years in bliss beyond comparison, or the opposite. What is not like this holds no value. Therefore, do not waste the precious jewel of your life on unworthy actions, and do not let them slip away without compensation. Strive to ensure that not a single breath of yours is spent except in an act of obedience or a good deed through which you draw closer to Allah. For if you had a jewel from the treasures of this world, you would be saddened by its loss. So why do you neglect your hours and moments? And how can you not feel sorrow for your passing time without any compensation? Just beautiful. Just beautiful. Just beautiful. Look at that. It's actually a poetry. فاغتنم رحمك الله حياتك النفيسة واحتفظ بأوقاتك العزيزة واعلم أن مدة حياتك محدودة وأنفاسك معدودة فكل نفس ينقص به جزء منك والعمر كله قصير والباقي منه هو اليسير وكل جزء منه جوهرة نفيسة لا عدل لها. And just look at that. It's just so beautiful. We're pearls of the prophet, but we're wanting to see how other scholars had looked through the lens of these hadith. So this is a hadith, and those scholars, even though he only lived, like I said, 45 years of age, but was capable of being one of the greatest scholars, and his name was always mentioned as one of the best and most important scholars for the Hanbali madhab. Imam al-Maqdisi was also Hanbali madhab. We're not here just focus on al-Hanabila, but it's important to see what other scholars had actually learned from the inspiration of those ahadith. So the question is, well, how do we maintain our identity? Well, in order to maintain our identity, there are a number of things that we have to keep in mind. Number one, al-fitan, al-ibtila, al-da'wa, al-jihad. Wait a minute, how do we get there? So what is al-fitan? So al-fitan are basically the different trials. Yeah, you've got the different trials that will come at you, and without you realizing what it, let's actually give that translation right there. I'm just going to put in this translation really quick in order to help you see it. Let's see right there. Let's see. And here we go. Just letting you see it. Sorry, I didn't actually. Let's see. Steadfastness and trials. Well, what does it mean to actually have a trial anyways? So trials can be in different areas. Remember when we said that dunya mal'una, trials can be in different things. The biggest fitna, remember the DNAIM? Let's write that down, right? Let's look at the DNAIM for those that are not used to Aisha was in her DNAIM. Okay, let's do it right there. DNAIM. So the legal maxims and the most important things that Islam regards as sanctuary and things that are the most important thing about your life. This is an acronym. D stands for deen. N stands for nafs. A stands for aql. I stands for ird. M stands for mal. Give it to me in English. Okay. Deen stands for religion. N stands for health/life. Aql stands for mental health. And let's say, and ird stands for family and chastity. Mal stands for wealth and property. Okay. So what does that mean? So in Islam, it regarded that the most important thing that you need to be focused on, whether in preservation or whether what is your priority. So that's basically your priority. Your priorities are basically within this category. Wait a minute, where did you get that from? We got that from the Quran and the Sunnah. So the scholars called it maqasid al-sharia. Your religion and the preservation of your religion actually should be your number one priority. Number two, the preservation of your health and your life. Well, this isn't necessarily you as an individual, but that's also the society as well. So when you're looking at fitan, you're looking at the worst fitna that you can run across is if the fitna or the trial or probably anything that regresses your faith. That's the worst fitna you can get into. The second fitna is perhaps a fitna that affects your life and your health. The third fitna is the fitna that can affect your mental health. The fourth fitna, and scholars have differences of opinions on whether family and chastity come before come before mental health or not. The fourth fitna is basically what affects your chastity, what affects your family. And finally, the worst or the last worst fitna is basically the wealth and property. So having that being said, when you're looking at, well, you lost your wealth, you lost your job, alhamdulillah, you've got your family. Alhamdulillah, you've got your mental health. Alhamdulillah, you've got your health. Alhamdulillah, you've got your religion. But your religion should be your first focus. And in order to make sure that you're not losing your identity, the first thing that you want to invest in is making sure that you're investing in expanding your religion, whether in its application or whether it's expanding in your religion in terms of commitment and consistency and being steadfast. How do I do that? How do I live that? Two things are necessary. Number one, knowledge. Number two, the society that you put yourself in. These two elements are key to helping you stay steadfast. Knowledge, the society that you put yourself in, because of the great impact they have in redirecting your understanding about yourself, your understanding about the purpose that you're heading to, and your understanding of how you can put these two things together and get to the purpose that preceded your existence. Number two, you could have different tribulations. The different tribulations can come across, whether it can basically be coming, perhaps affecting your health, getting cancer, getting a different illness, whatever it is. And you could also have different mental issues, depression, perhaps anxiety, perhaps a trauma, something that you had lived as a result of when you were young or when you were married, etc., mental issues, anxiety that affected your mental health. But for a believer, they recognize, how do I stay steadfast? I would connect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and understand that inna ma'al usri yusra. I would recognize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that with every hardship, there's ease. And with every patience. What does it mean to be patient anyways? What it means is to not let your emotions get you carried away, but you would contain, whether it's pain, whether it's sorrow, whether it's anger, that you would basically contain it in order to direct you towards making the right decisions, making the right behavior according to the principles of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's what it means to be patient. What it means to be patient is patience in obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. 2, patience in staying away from haram. 3, patience as a result of different distresses and pains you might encounter. And 4, patience in the different circumstances, that social circumstances or other circumstances that might come unexpectedly. What it means to be patient is to not lose your emotions and not panic. Why does Islam tell us not to panic? Some things it's basically part of our nature that we might panic sometimes, and sometimes that's actually necessary to let the adrenaline help us get out of the problem. Certainly. We're not talking about this type of necessary panic mode to get you stronger. We're telling you the first thing that you want to do is make sure that you recognize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had predestined everything, and therefore what is necessary of you is to put in a certain amount of force, a certain amount of energy, a certain amount of, let's say, investment. And even if it doesn't get to your expected and, let's say, hoped result, at the end, you had done your part. So therefore, you would recognize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that controls the odds of things and not necessarily you controlling everything. So what would you then maintain? You would maintain right there your ability to, yes, definitely, you need the adrenaline, but you also need the focus. So that's why Islam tells you, don't let the panic mode take over, but we want you to definitely take in consideration that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had predetermined and decreed everything beforehand. We just want you to put in the focus, not to get to what result, but I want you to put in the focus that you put in and invest in the effort and invest towards a certain result. But even if it doesn't work out, don't lose your hope. That's the key thing. Don't lose your hope. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was basically telling us those are keys to helping you maintain your identity. Number one, is maintaining your deen. 2, steadfastness in keeping your place of patience and not getting into that panic mode. And 3, how do I continue doing that? Well, that's the other part. Steadfast and calling on to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why is that important? Because it's making you from a person that is an object of other activism to you being a person of activism and doing the job. In other words, from you being somebody else's a product to you being a person of influence. Once you're a person of influence, then that's when you would become a person that is investing the energy towards a certain cause. That would redirect your vision, redirect your energy, and certainly redirect your identity from a person that is a product of others to a person that is a leader. Here we go. From a person that is being led to a leader. Number 4, steadfastness in jihad. What is jihad? So jihad is basically any effort that you would invest in something. That's jihad. But the effort that you would invest in something, it doesn't necessarily have to get to victory. The effort that you would invest is basically something that you have to focus on, continue putting your energy. What would usually stop the energy from moving forward? It's usually fear. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches us that don't fear the powers of others or fear the powers of others and how they might take your life into a different end. That's important. When you look at a mu'min, they would fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So how can I gather my fear and put it in place? The dhikr is Allahu Akbar. How did we get there? Allahu Akbar. Yes. Whenever you're feeling afraid, say Allahu Akbar. Why? Because you know that by focusing your thoughts, your vision, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the greatest thing, everything else gets minimized. Everything else gets minimized and it becomes small and small and small to the point that your power gets basically backed up and supported by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You will then, with Allahu Akbar, Umar ibn al-Khattab said, we're basically a nation. A'azzana Allahu bil-Islam. Islam is what gave us that honor, that dignity. إن ابتغينا العزة لغير الله أذلنا الله. If we were to ever seek honor through other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will humiliate us. 4 things are key in order to recognize what's important, in order to live on haqq, living in steadfastness on truth. 4 things. Let's summarize it right there. Number 1, recognizing justice. 2, recognizing patience. 3, living that satisfaction. 4, courage. There's no shaja'a, courage. There's no way that you can grow in such steadfastness if you don't recognize your place of justice and what it means to recognize justice. And if you're not putting in and investing some form of steadfastness during such turbulences, and if you're basically not recognizing that there has to be an effort that is invested, which is right there, al-iffa, then you're not going to be capable of recognizing that there needs to be be an amount of courage. Where's courage? Does that mean that there's no fear? No, there's going to be fear. It's an issue of redirecting your fear, that you're fearing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're fearing the loss in akhirah, and even right there, if it's fearing the loss of akhirah, you're going to then gather your powers and you're going to put in that I don't fear death. I don't fear the loss of my job if that meant that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that gives the provision. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that gives the provision that is necessary for us to survive. I'm not afraid. What do we get right there? We would recognize then by redirecting that focus that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is our place of one, الثبات على منهج الحق. We're steadfast on the path of truth. And when do we become steadfast on the path of truth and not fear anything? Because we recognize that death is inevitable. Death is inevitable, whether it's dying as a result of an illness or whether it's dying as a result of getting killed or whatever, it's inevitable. But you would recognize that, no, I'm going to basically continue with my courage because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had decreed how long we would live for. He decreed how long and what patience we should be. We should be investing in what pains we're going through. He decreed all of this. So in other words, what is requested of me is to continue living on haqq. How do I get to what are the different ways that I can maintain my deen? Number one, getting al-ilm, knowledge. Two, sincerity. And we're going to talk about each and every single one of these, inshallah. Following the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. The four, dua, tawakkul, trusting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, righteous deeds, avoiding sins, patience and acceptance of Allah's decree, adhering to the Muslim community and the Muslim leaders, and enjoining in good and forbidding evil, loving for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How did you get there? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now these are the points. Now we're going to talk about some of those points that relate to these, let's call them bullet points. These bullet points are just this is a prelude, but how and what leads me to this? Let's see. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, فَاسْتَمْسِكْ بِالَّذِي أُوحِيَ إِلَيْكَ إِنَّكَ عَلَى صِرَاطٍ مُسْتَقِيمٍ وَإِنَّهُ لَذِكْرٌ لَكَ وَلِقَوْمِكَ وَسَوْفَ تُسْأَلُونَ. What is فَاسْتَمْسِكْ بِالَّذِي أُوحِيَ إِلَيْكَ وَأَنَّ هَذَا صِرَاطِي مُسْتَقِيمًا فَاتَّبِعُوهُ وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا السُّبُلَ فَتَفَرَّقَ بِكُمْ عَنْ سَبِيلِهِ ذَلِكُمْ وَصَّاكُمْ بِهِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. Allah, I'm giving you here just different ayat from different surahs. يثبت الله الذين آمنوا بالقول الثابت في الحياة الدنيا وفي الآخرة. In another surah, وجعلنا منهم أئمة يهدون بأمرنا لما صبروا وكانوا بآياتنا يوقنون. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, لقد من الله على المؤمنين إذ بعث فيهم رسولا من أنفسهم يتلو عليهم آياته ويزكيهم ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة وإن كانوا من قبل في ضلال مبين. Another آية, فمن يرد الله أن يهديه يشرح صدره للإسلام ومن يرد أن يضله يجعل صدره ضيقا حرجا كأنما يصعد في السماء كذلك يجعل الله الرجس على الذين لا يؤمنون. Let's look at those ayat. We're going to look at these ayat and just read those ayat. And indeed, this is my straight path. You know what? I can actually do this. Let's do, so you could see, I guess, those multiple pages, right? Is this split? Here we go. So you could see the ayat. Here we go. And we can also read. Here we go. There we go. There we go. Let's see. And the ayah. فَاسْتَمْسِكْ بِالَّذِي أُوحِيَ لَكَ. And indeed, this is my straight path. So follow it. And do not follow other paths. Let or else, of course, they'll separate you from his way. This he has enjoined upon you, that you may become righteous. Harajan, Jamil. Where's Harajan? We're going to get there, inshallah. Which A was it? We're going to get there. Let's see the other one. وأن هذا صراطي مستقيما فاتبعوه ولا تتبعوا السبل فتفرق بكم عن سبيله. Let's see. Allah will keep firm those who believe with the word that stands firm in this world and in the hereafter. Let's read another ayah. And we had made from them the leaders who guide by our command, and when they were patient and were certain of our signs. This is actually one of my favorite ayat. This is one of my favorite ayat. Write this one. وَجَعَلْنَا مِنْهُمْ أَئِمَّةً يَهْدُونَ بِأَمْرِنَا لَمَّا صَبَرُوا. I want you to just look into this one. In order to become leaders and not become the product of others, you would basically have to, yes, number one, command, but they guide by their command. In other words, now they're activists, and they were patient. They were recognizing in order to live at a certain level of leadership, you have to go through certain hardships. And that's why you would see the societies that, or even different figures, those, whether Muslim or not Muslim, by the way, you would see those that would make it to different areas of leadership. They usually lived a tough life in their life. And that's why they basically manage to invest a lot of patience. Imagine if this patience that was invested in was for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They would be really patient. You can name whether Muslim or non-Muslim leaders. You could see that distress, الحزن يصنع الرجال. Sorrow, distress, hardships, challenges is basically what makes men and what makes leaders. People that had it easy and they were always feeling entitled, they didn't feel that they had to work towards a certain thing because they were already feeling that everything is there. They don't have to work towards it. And of course, it's not enough to work towards a goal, but you basically had to have وَكَانُوا بِآيَاتِنَا يُوقِنُونَ, and they had to basically have, in order to work towards that goal, they had to have one key thing, which is certainty and not doubt. Certainty in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That certainty that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is basically the one to give that revelation. Certainty in recognizing that what makes truth is basically what was sent by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala within that revelation, with al-wahi. Let's see. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also says, Indeed, Allah has bestowed a favor upon the believers when He sent among them a messenger from themselves, reciting to them His verses and purifying them and teaching them the book and wisdom, although they were before in clear error. I want you to look at this one. Well, this ayah, لَقَدْ مَنَّ اللَّهُ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. There is that blessing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given the believers. What is it? The most important blessing that you would have, بَعَثَ فِيهِمْ رَسُولًا مِّنْ أَنفُسِهِمْ. It's basically to know the place of guidance. رَسُولًا مِّنْ أَنفُسِهِمْ. A prophet from amongst themselves who was doing what? يَتْلُو عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتِهِ. In other words, the times to help you during the distress, to help you stay steadfast. You have to connect yourself always with learning the deen, with learning the Quran, with learning and connecting yourself to the principles of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's what's going to keep you steadfast. يَتْلُو عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتِهِ. But that's not enough to just learn the deen. You have to take in a moment, يُزَكِّيهِمْ. You have to take in a moment to invest in tazkiyah, a moment to invest in purification and self-purification, and certainly يعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة, and learn Al-Quran and learn As-Sunnah. Because if you want to stay on the right path, you want to make sure that you have these, let's call it these, remember the word armor. We talked about that before. Those that are fasiqeen, we talked about that before. And we said the fruit, the word fasaqa actually means to remove the peel off the fruit. And if you remove the peel off the fruit, you let the fruit rotten faster. And that's where the word fasaq comes from. The word
go to harm. Go ahead.
Exactly. So you remove the fruit, you remove the peel off the fruit, you let it rotten faster, and you basically let it get exposed to the different bacteria, to the different, of course, the different things within its surrounding, and it basically dies faster, rottens faster, the list goes on. Same thing. You need to have an armor. That armor that is the shield to protect you is basically Sharia, to protect you from the different bacterias, contaminations that are surrounding you without you realizing. Certainly, there are certain people that you cannot have in your life. There are certain lifestyles you shouldn't be having in your life. There are certain things you need to keep distance to make sure that you are protected. And that's what taqwa is. That's what taqwa is. And in order to know those areas, yes, you definitely need to say, بَعَثَ فِيهِمْ رَسُولًا. You need to find out your place of guidance first. 2, you need to make sure that you put in and invest a time of dhikr. 3, you need to make sure that you're removing all those contaminations and the sins. 4, you need to make sure that you put in a time for learning ilm and learning that through the kitab and sunnah, you're learning that the things that will keep you protected. وَإِن كَانُوا مِن قَبْلُ لَفِي ضَلَالٍ مُبِينٍ. If that is not done, then what you're not going to realize is that you're going to be in a self-delusion and a self-manipulation. So that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us right there, فَمَا يُرِدِ اللَّهُ أَن يَهْدِيَهُ يَشْرَحْ صَدْرَهُ لِلْإِسْلَامِ وَمَا يُرِدْ أَن يُضِلَّهُ يَجْعَلْ صَدْرَهُ ضَيِّقًا حَرَجًا كَأَنَّمَا يَصَّعَّدُ في السَّمَاءِ كَذَلِكَ يَجْعَلُ اللَّهُ الرِّجْسَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. So whoever Allah wills to guide, He expands his heart to accept Islam. And whoever He wills to misguide, He makes his breast or his chest constricted and tight. That's what harajan is. As though they were climbing into the sky. Thus, Allah places defilement upon those who do not believe. And I want you to look at this one. What we're seeing right there, we're seeing that there's a certain cause and effect. The cause is basically if a person is investing towards their guidance, then therefore they're going to see that mental health in place. They're going to see that they're at ease, even though the world might actually be mal'una at them. But to them, they're living in happiness. Even though mal'una failed, that dunya failed them. That dunya didn't come at their service. But they recognize, Ya Rab, I'm living this life for you. Ya Allah. And what is it? What did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? قُلْ إِنَّمَا أَشْكُو بَثِّي وَحُزْنِي إِلَى اللَّهِ. I would only complain my distresses to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And how was حياتي ونسكي محياي ومماتي لله رب العالمين. And say your life, your hereafter, your death, and all the different rituals, they would be for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and not for anyone else. So what does that mean? Well, that means يشرح صدره للإسلام. If a person is finding guidance, you would see that their chest is just so open to guidance. And whoever would basically not accept Islam, you would see ضيقا حرجا. They would feel that everything is distressing. Everything is hard on them. Anything.
That's so true, subhanAllah.
Yeah. They would feel that if you're asking them to probably maintain a certain principle of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's like, I can't, it's too much on me. What if this? And they would, shaitan yuzayyin lahum. Shaitan would beautify it for them. That, oh, if you were to put on hijab, you're probably not going to be somebody at least finding you and somebody interested in getting married to you. Oh, if I were to lose this job, oh, that means I'm going to probably end up being unemployed and end up not being able to pay my bills. I'm not going to have the food. I'm not going to be able to do. And then you're basically feeling that everything is closing up on you. But for a believer, salamat salamat. Dates and water. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will, I'll put in the investment. I'll work. I'll try to find rizq. And Ya Allah, you're a raziq. I'll work and I'll depend on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But you could see a believer, they're connected to what? They're connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that's why they will find values that the others will not find in matter. People would usually focus on matter, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you that happiness is actually on the inside. Let's see right there. The Prophet ﷺ tells Shaddad ibn Aus, يا شداد ibn Aus, إذا رأيت الناس قد اكتنزوا الذهب والفضة فاكنز هؤلاء الكلمات. Let me take you to that hadith so you could actually see it, right? And here's the English piece of it. Okay, I'm gonna allow you to see it. Here we go. There we go. He said, يا شداد بن أوس إذا رأيت الناس قد اكتنزوا الذهب والفضة فاكنز هؤلاء الكلمات. اللهم إني أسألك الثبات في الأمر والعزيمة على الرشد وأسألك موجبات رحمتك وعزائم مغفرتك. This is important to keep in mind. Where the Prophet ﷺ was teaching, who was teaching Shaddad ibn Aus. He was teaching him a couple words. And he said, O Shaddad ibn Aus, I'm going to give you the rest of the hadith right there. I should have mentioned the rest of the hadith, so I'm just going to mention it right there. Okay? Okay. Let's see the rest of the hadith. He said, Allahumma inni as'aluka thabata fil amr. Make the dua. Oh Lord, I ask you to give me the steadfastness on all the matters. Oh, that was a dua. Sorry. The Prophet ﷺ was telling him, if you see people running towards and hoarding gold and silver, then you basically hoard these things. In other words, those are your treasures. What is the treasure? The dua. It's a word, just a couple sentences. Allahumma inni as'aluka al-thabata fil amr wal-azimata ala al-rushd. O Lord Almighty, I ask you to give me steadfastness on my matters. Wal-azimata ala al-rushd. Why al-azima? Determination upon guidance, because you can know what guidance is, but you can lose your steadfastness and not really be committed to it. So you would make the dua, Ya Allah, I ask you to keep me steadfast and to give me the determination towards guidance. وأسألك موجبات رحمتك. And I ask you to give me all the different things that lead to your mercy. وعزائم مغفرتك. And that lead to the best of your forgiveness. أسألك شكر نعمتك. And I ask you to give me the ability to be thankful for all the bounties that you had given me. وحسن عبادتك. And to worship you in the best of the ways. وأسألك قلبا سليما. And I ask you to give me a heart that is full of sincerity. ولسانا صادقا. And a tongue of honesty. وأسألك من خير ما تعلم. And I ask you from the best of what you had taught. وأعوذ بك من شر ما تعلم. And وأسألك من خير ما تعلم. And I ask you the best of what you would know. In other words, the best of what you had decreed. وأعوذ بك من شر ما تعلم. And I would ask you, or I would seek refuge in you from the evils of what you would know. In other words, decreed. وأستغفرك لما لا تعلم. And I ask you for the forgiveness of what, of course, when you're looking at your situation, there's so many different things that you had committed, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is asking you to seek forgiveness and of course, and stay committed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, this is extremely important to mention because what usually happens, we think that it's all about me getting the knowledge. But what we may not realize that no, there are certain things that you have to maintain in order to keep that place of knowledge. And of course, when we're right there asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness for what we don't know of. We don't know of so many different things, but we're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ya Allah, we seek refuge in all of this. Ya Allah, we ask you to keep us steadfast. Ya Allah, keep us determined. Ya Allah, give us and make us get onto the path of what leads to your mercy. Ya Allah, guide us to the path of what leads to your forgiveness. Ya Allah, make us of those that would recognize the bounties and not only look at what's missing, but recognize what they have and make us from those that would always worship you in sincerity and the best of the worship. And Ya Allah, make us always have a good heart and make us always speaking good. I want to look at these. When you look at a heart, a tongue, a vision, this is all redirecting our vision and redirecting how we see the world around us, whether it's the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would know or the things that you don't know, the evil things that might come at you and all of that. Don't live and focus your vision in only seeing that, but say, Ya Allah, making that dhikr, Ya Rab. In a person that's constantly doing this dhikr, they'll be the ones to continuously be capable of remembering them in the times of distresses, because they're basically what's going to fire and wire in your brain. The firing and wiring in your brain happens when you're in a moment of relaxation. And then when that distress comes up unexpectedly, then what you had already wired in your brain then goes boom. It just fires in your brain when you mostly need it. That's why you would say the ones to do the last words is La ilaha illallah during their death are the ones that were living this steadfastness during their life. It becomes the path that they had been living in throughout their life. During their death, it will basically continue to being exactly what their brain was wired into. I'll make this dua again. اللهم إني أسألك الثبات في الأمر والعزيمة على الرشد وأسألك موجبات رحمتك وعزائم مغفرتك أسألك شكر نعمتك وحسن عبادتك وأسألك قلبا سليما ولسانا صادقا وأسألك من خير ما تعلم وأعوذ بك من شر ما تعلم وأستغفرك لما لا تعلم. Inshallah, next week, let's try to just memorize at least this one. It's not too bad, right? Not too bad. Should we try memorizing that one?
Yes, yes, you took picture so we can memorize.
Okay. I'll send also, I'll send it to,
Oh yeah, if you can put the audio.
yeah, we could do that too. Inshallah. Any questions before we let you all take your time to rest? Any questions before we go?
The one on Dunya's cast, I'm still spinning. So Dunya is
Yes,
everything in Dunya is cast.
absolutely.
If you wasted
Absolutely.
5 minutes. So how do you live like Aisha when Dunya is cast?
Yeah, well, you don't take Aisha because Aisha still is alive.
Oh yeah,
You
the people
take,
who are dead. Okay. So the
okay,
the
remember
prophet,
this exactly. You
yes.
take, you know
Jazakallah.
what? There's this figure that I had been for the past few days. I had been really, really afraid of. Let me show you this person. This person
Can you
is a
stop the recording for class?
Yeah, hold on. This person is a scholar. I'm going to show you this person. Okay? This person is a scholar.
Yeah,
This
put it on
person
the picture.
memorized the Quran. This person was an author for a number of different books in Aqidah. This person was at the forefront in teaching Islam and basically writing in defense of Islam. Guess what? This person then shifted and became an atheist and wrote books in defense of atheism and mocking the Prophet ﷺ, mocking Sirah, mocking Islam, mocking Sharia, and died as such. This is scary.
He's from Saudi Arabia. Okay.
Yes. Well, I mean, we can't necessarily say only Saudis would go through such a transition, but it can happen that we could see that, yes, it can happen that someone could live to seek ilm at one point, but then shift. One thing that is noticeable about this figure
There's
is
no
that
nur in his face.
there's no nude in his face. One thing that you would see in this figure that he's, A level in writing poetry. Excellent. One thing you would see is that he was extremely arrogant. He was always self-praising, always praising himself, always speaking about himself as the person that knows everything. When a person lives such arrogance, what happens is that their hearts become so closed. And That's really scary. And نسأل الله العفو والعافية.
Ameen.
نسأل الله العفو والعافية. May
Ameen.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us amongst those that would have their words, the last words be La ilaha illallah. And make us from those that when the Prophet ﷺ was making the dua, he was always making the dua. Remember this dua. اللهم إني أسألك فعل الخيرات وترك المنكرات وحب المساكين. Ya Allah, I ask you to give me, maybe we could write this hadith for us. Allahumma.
Oh, that's a hadith?
It's a dua, of course.
Okay,
أسأل
mashallah.
فعل الخيرات.
Yeah, you do say that dua.
Yep, I always say that dua. This is my favorite dua. اللهم إني أسألك فعل الخيرات. Here we go. Here's the dua. Let's do it right there. وترك المنكرات وحب المساكين. وإذا أردت بعبادك فتنة فاقبضني إليك غير مفتون. That's the dua. Ya Allah, I ask you to grant me the ability to do what is good and leave what is evil and loving the needy. And if you will, or if you decree any fitna or trials on your servants, then take me to you without being inflicted with the fitna. Just keep that dua always be something that you would remember. Allahumma inni as'aluka fi'al al-khayrat وترك المنكرات وحب المساكين وإذا أردت بعبادك فتنة فاقبضني إليك غير مفتون. Because you could never guarantee. One thing you would look, Allahumma inni as'aluk. Ya Allah, I ask you, give me. You may know what's right to do, but not have the capacity to do it. Remember that the hadith that we were just doing. The hadith that we were just doing earlier, where what was he telling Shaddad? He said, Ya Shaddad, وَإِذَا رَأَيْتَ النَّاسَ قَدْ اكْتَنَسُوا الذَّهَبَ وَالْفِضَّةَ. When you see people, they're just hoarding silver and gold, you hoard something else. You be a person that's seeking something else. To you, what's more important is not this carbon that's in it, but make the dua, Allahumma inni as'aluka al-thabata fil amr. Make that dua. Ya Allah, I ask you to keep me steadfast on the matter. What matter? Steadfast in the matter of La ilaha illallah. وَالْعَزِيمَةَ عَلَى الرُّشْدِ. And give me that determination to stay in guidance. وَأَسْأَلُكَ مُوجِبَاتِ رَحْمَتِكَ. And I ask you to lead me to what leads me for mercy or to your mercy, and what leads me to your forgiveness. And I ask you to make me one of those people that would be thankful for the different now. Constantly make this dua. And when you're constantly making the dua, think of the different elements that will keep you understanding this dua. Redirect your vision. حب المساكين. Why is that even important? Because when you love the needy, when you surround yourself with those that are poor, you start learning the value of things and not necessarily just money and counting wealth. You're taking it into a different area, a different course. That's what a believer would do, taking us into a different area. All right. Any questions before I turn off the recording?
You know, something that you were talking about with this scholar. I mean, subhanAllah, this is really, honestly, one of the scariest things for me is that I'm a revert, and to have, subhanAllah, Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, I apologize, I don't know how to say it in Arabic, but he made the dua every day, Allah, turner of heart, keep my heart on the straight path.
Allahumma ya muqallib al-qulub thabbit qalbi ala dinik.
Amen. Amen, Ya Rab. And
Yeah,
and he said, there will come a time where people wake up as believers and die as non-believers, and wake up as non-believers and die,
Yeah.
go to bed as believers. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us to live
Ameen
and
ya
die as believers.
Ameen ya
Jazakallah
Rabbi.
khairan.
I had seen that many, many, many times. People were, there's a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ says, إن أحدكم يعمل بعمل أهل الجنة حتى ما يكون بينه وبينها إلا ذراع فيسبق عليه الكتاب فيعمل بعمل أهل النار فيدخلها. That one may do throughout their life the actions of the people of Ahl al-Jannah, to the point that there would be no distance between them and hellfire except an arm, like an arm reach. But then what was decreed, in other words, what the truth of what was in their heart, comes to the surface right before their death. And then they would basically go into a shift in their life. It would take them into hellfire.
That's why it's so important to always have a clean heart.
Absolutely. 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 Taking that moment to learn how to take away the arrogance, to learn how to take away all that, I guess, individualism, because our society, if you were to look the hadith where the Prophet ﷺ talked about the end of the times, and what happens at the end of the times, well, people will wake up, like you said, will wake up believers and sleep as disbelievers, and sleep as believers and wake up as disbelievers, all that contradiction. It really is a result of the lifestyle and the lifestyle that we're living in. It's a lifestyle of individualism, existentialism, postmodernism, nihilism. Everything is just taking us towards that end. And when a person is just living for their matter, then they become greedy. If a person is just living for this life, then they would start racing towards this life. And of course, then they become people of injustice. If a person is just working and just seeing that they're the only individuals here, they lose their values, they lose their principles, because to them, why should I care about that person? Then the result is going to be arrogance and more arrogance. That's why we're all seeing, everybody's talking about narcissism, and even though what we're seeing in narcissism, and even those that are narcissists are speaking of narcissism, and you're like, wait a minute, what's going on here? And you don't say that. Kibriya, and that, I guess, arrogance and kibriya and narcissism is really a result, and it's a byproduct of individualism, existentialism. It's a byproduct of the postmodern life and the atheist life that we're living. It's a byproduct of it. It comes with it. Allah al-Musta'an. Allah al-Musta'an. Ya Rabbi, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep us steadfast. Allahumma ameen. Ya
Amen.
Rabbi, Allah subhanahu